Okay.
Okay.
This is Bonnie Moore, who came and did a demo and workshop for us back in 2019. And she has hosted the Damascus Open Studios. They're toured in May, and she participated in the Lake Oswego Open Studios last October. That's where I reconnected, yes.
And I'm doing that again this October, September.
Okay, oh, good, okay. She started taking classes in 2006, and so not quite 20 years ago, and she's been painting ever since. Before that, she was a hairstylist. As she states in her website, nature is her inspiration, and she loves bright colors. She teaches classes year-round, except takes the summer off, and she has a workshop in a month that she may tell you where that will be. And anyway, and she'll be on YouTube, so you can see this again when it's on YouTube. But watercolors are specialty.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So I started as a child, my mom enrolled me in lessons and I did oils. And then in middle school, they took too long to dry, so I switched to acrylics. And then in high school, I was introduced to watercolor and I loved it. I was told I didn't do it right. I think I was probably too detailed for the instructor, but I liked what I had done, so I knew it was something I wanted to revisit. Then college, kids, marriage, kids, and then our youngest was a senior in high school, and I thought now is my time. So I signed up under Beth Verheiden. She lives in the Boring area, and I trained under her until she retired. I had already started teaching, but I was still taking instruction from her. So I love it. It's so fun. It's always changing. I tend to get tired of things quickly, and so you can change the papers, you can try different pigments, different brushes. There's just so many different things that you can do with it to keep it fresh. I just came back from Rhode Island where I took a 3-day workshop with Paul Jackson. He's known for really dark darks against light lights, and that was really fun. So I'm still a little fatigued from that, but it was a wonderful time, great people. At the Rhode Island Watercolor Society, they were established in 1896, oldest in the United States. So this one, we were doing reflections in water at Paul Jackson, so I kind of was trying to do the little ripple water thing again, and Shar had seen me do this technique where I'm actually putting paint on and then I blow it with a straw to get the branches on a tree. And so I'll be demonstrating that. And then I had my shoulder replaced 1.5 years ago, and that's when I had to retire from doing hair. So I was trying to figure out how could I paint. I couldn't hold my arm out to paint. Well, I was in a sling, and I'd seen on YouTube where you can put your watercolor direct from the tube on a credit card and then slide it along your paper and then take a brush and do that. And so that's how I did these 3. I happened, some of that was done down in here. So I'm going to incorporate that. So I had to start this last night because I knew there'd be no way I don't know that I could finish it today either, but so up here I'm going to do some of the blowing of trees, and then I'll dry it, and then I'll do some more trees over top of those that get bigger as they come forward in the painting. And then down here I will do the credit card technique. And you guys I don't know how you're going to see it with me. Just remind me, I kind of get into what I'm doing and ask me to hold it up or something, okay? All right. So, here I go.
Tell us what kind of paint you like.
I am not stuck in any one brand. Nobody's gonna have me represent a brand. So, I just kind of find colors that I like. So Paul Jackson's got his whole line, and I swore I wasn't gonna buy any because I have a plethora of paints. But I did buy his deep blue and his deep purple, his deep dark blue and deep purple, and they're made through, Da Vinci makes them. They make a really pretty black. And then I like this Daniel Smith Ultramarine Turquoise. That's kind of what I've got going here. And this is the deep dark blue and the purple mixed in a light value down here. And then this one's the Daniel Smith, and I use Winsor Newton. Something that Paul mentioned though was with M. Graham, Mary Graham, he knows her, and she says, don't use my paints. And they have really pretty paints, but if you've ever purchased them, you'll notice the honey in them leaks out, where they use gum arabic and the others, she uses honey. And he said, don't use paints that have honey in them, because he says honey never ever goes bad, and it will draw silverfish and different insects to your work. Which, I put dust covers on the back of all of my paintings, these scrapers, because I have noticed in the past that little insects will get in there in between your mat and your frame, and you can't get them out unless you take the whole thing apart again. So that's one of the things with watercolor.
Could I have you push that that just a little bit over?
How about what I put over here?
Oh, you can have it over here if you want.
Okay.
I mean, just a little bit so we can see what you're doing on your painting.
Okay.
That's great, thank you.
Fair enough. All right, so I'm going to, using a small brush, since I'm doing little trees right now. If you have any questions you want to ask me,
I have a
feel
question.
free. Go ahead.
Do you just use tube colors, or do you use like different colors on a palette, you know, that they sell in stores, you know, like a hue of a yellow, because I do watercolors too, yellow, and then have all different from the darkest color to the lightest. Do you use those kind of do you use that kind of paint too, or just tubes?
I use that, like I've got a little travel palette, one of those little fan out kinds that have different
No,
colors.
not just for travel, just your ordinary artwork.
No, I have a palette that's full of all those, because that's what my original instructor had us do. But as I told you in the beginning, I'm impatient. So digging in dry paint is not my funnest thing to do. I want to get to the thing. So normally I don't let it dry like this. I'll just get it all in a puddle, because once it's wet, you can reconstitute it. There's no right or wrong in that. It's kind of your preference. Paul works from like you do, and I just don't have patience for it. If I don't have to, I want to have my fun now, because, you know, gardening's calling too, so. Okay. So I think I want some of that color, but I also think.
Where do you show your art?
I am out in the Perfect Peace Gallery out in Lake Oswego. It's on McVeigh Avenue in Lake Oswego. But where in Lake Oswego? If you were coming from here going to Lake Oswego, there's like no good way to get to Lake Oswego, you know? It's the first light when you're coming into town is McVeigh Avenue. You just take a left, and then it's just before the next light on the left. There's a little coffee shop and an exercise place and all in there. So my plan is, we'll see if it happens, is I'm gonna put I just wanted to deviate from more realistic colors because I like jewel tones. I'm going to try with this turquoise, put some of that in there, and then I want to drop a little bit of the yellow in there where the light would be, where it would be backlit. See if that happens.
What do you think is the most difficult part about watercolors?
The most difficult part is if you try to manipulate it all and not let it do its thing. Everybody tries to control it, and if you control it too much, you lose the magic of it. Because when you let watercolor mix itself, and mix the other colors together by itself, it's so much prettier. We have a tendency to want to do it all and then we get mud. So here I'm gonna, I'm really got good shapes going on today. So I've got to start. Now to do the blowing technique, I have to really juice it up. Those things where watercolor follows, the paint follows where your water is. So I have to give enough pigment in there and water for me to be able to blow it somewhere.
Is the paper dry?
Yes.
Okay.
So right now this is called painting wet on dry, wet brush, dry paper.
Well, it looks like you're using the end of the brush. Is that just to get that fine line?
Yes. And this straw is really small, so it makes me a little lightheaded. So, yeah,
Was that to move the paint around or was that just dry it off?
to move it around, to create some little branches that I didn't have to paint. I'm just gonna keep making some of those.
Can I ask what brand of brushes you prefer?
I use synthetic because they're more cost effective, but I tell you what, after watching Paul use Sable, they hold so much. I mean, I thought my brush was held, I use silver black velvet. And you could get them through Mary Artist, which is in McMinnville. I don't know if you guys have ever used them. You can call in your order or go on their website and they get it to you within 2 business days.
What did you give the name again?
Mary, M-E-R-R-I, Artist. Yes? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanna let you know that I've painted with watercolor before, and, when I don't use watercolor dries really fast.
Yeah.
Cause I found, learned that watercolor dries a lot faster than oil paint sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Or acrylic.
I told you I was impatient, right? That's why I don't do oils anymore. Now, I kind of want to soften this look since it's far away. So I'm going to just mist this with water and it's going to make it kind of all swoosh. I think it should. Down here. Let's see if I can blow it anymore. That'll be a cool, like, receding background. I passed out up here, just just give me a moment, I should resuscitate.
Now, I do something similar, and I use a hair dryer, set on low, a very focused beam of wind. It does something very similar,
Really?
yeah.
It doesn't dry it out too fast?
No, if you get enough liquid on there, it'll take a while.
I haven't tried that.
Yeah. Well, maybe for something delicate like that, it would work.
I don't know.
When you do your watercoloring, do you wet the paper first, or can you do it on a white canvas right away without watering it down, or putting a background in it first? Can you just start painting on a white canvas with, the way you?
Watercolor paper, you mean, not canvas, but watercolor paper?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, this was all, my background was all done wet on wet, where I got the paper wet, and then I did the paint to do all of this.
No, the background color, like, you did that too initially, of the painting you were going to produce, you did a background before.
This I did, yes.
Do you do that all the time for watercolor? or can you paint on a sheet of paper, just white paper, and start watercoloring without doing that freehand?
You have to pre-wet, I think is what she's saying. Do you have to pre-wet all the paper, or can you do an area and just paint?
Is that what you mean?
Well, no, just paint the whole thing, not even an area.
Like instead of doing a background color, just
The background color, yeah. Do you have to do that before? That's what I want to ask.
That again is a preference.
Oh.
I,
Depends on the project, Rita.
yeah, I tend
Yeah.
to do my backgrounds first because I don't like trying to paint
Okay.
around things.
So,
Because of it being watercolor, because I do watercolor like, and I don't do the background like that, the pre thing. And like you said, it's hard for me to go back and do the background after I finish my painting.
Because you're painting around.
Yeah.
Right.
so you did your background before your bird?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I drew my bird in.
Oh.
I drew the bird in first.
Oh.
And then, from the looks of it, I did my background color, real light value, and then I put my masking fluid on to save the lighter parts of the bird. Had I done it first, these would have been white. And I did the same thing down here, we see the light values here. I put masking fluid on after I'd done a real light value. Let that dry, and that way I can paint over and it saves what's under it. Then this morning I rubbed that all off, because when I do reeds and things, if I get to that point, I don't want it to skip over top of the masking fluid. I want it to look like it's going over it.
Well, do you do a neutral color? Because, I mostly paint flowers and they're all different colors. And that's why I don't know what I don't want to do my background before my painting, because I don't know the colors, how it's going to turn out. So.
Well,
Go and, yeah, go
I
and paint
usually
the color.
choose my colors before I paint.
Oh.
So I'll show you something that I do to test my colors this is something I do. I tell my students, always test your colors to see if they're gonna play well together. I tend to teach, when I teach using 5 colors, and then we mix all of the other colors. So I teach color mixing. When I was taught, we used a color for a tube. I've got tubes of every color. But now I tend to mix, and when you use the same colors that are gonna, whichever colors you use, on your palette that are gonna talk to each other, then your painting looks really cohesive. It doesn't look like, what's that color? I don't see that anywhere else. It doesn't look foreign. So this is something that I do. So this was I told one guy, I said, this was what I was practicing last night. My husband goes, that looks pretty creepy. So I'm using that for scratch paper now. So when I want to see what my colors will do, I'll get a square wet. And then I'll take, so I've got my teal here, my turquoise. I'm gonna put that on there. Clean out my brush. Go into my purples, here we go. My purple, I'm gonna slightly overlap. That way I can see what color those two are gonna make when they mix. Then I've got that deep, dark blue I was telling you about. Overlap again. You can kind of tip your paper if you need to. Let it kind of mix. Then I am using, it's called quinacridone gold. I'm gonna run that across all 3 of those colors, and you'll see the neutral that it makes. So I'll run it through this way. Clean out my brush. Then I'll run it through the other direction. So as long as you like what's happening in here, you can use those colors together. If something happens, it's just really ghastly or looks like baby poo or something, then you change up one of those colors until you get a mixture that works well together. I naturally shake a little bit. I'm just a little more nervous today, so you notice me going, ee. It's always hard being on the spot, you know? Okay. Maybe I shouldn't even, what time is it? Try to finish this background.
Almost 1:30.
Okay. That's still real soft, so it's moving on its own because I've got the paper wet. My trees, if you notice, I'm touching it with a damp brush underneath so they don't look like little sticks. And I do that while the paint's wet, otherwise it's really hard to get rid of that. And it allows a little bit of a almost reflection down into the water. Sometimes if you just paint upside down, then you're creating better shapes instead of trying to do an exact replica, whoops, of something. And, you know, sometimes I do whoops. But, you know, that's okay. Things happen. Flood this with some paint. I like to use 300-pound paper. Because I can pick it up like this and it doesn't go.
Where do you get that?
It's Arches brand. I buy it usually through Cheap Joe's in bulk.
Oh, okay, then.
I buy like 25 sheets at a time. It's $400 some, but the cost per sheet then goes down substantially.
So you're ordering large sheets?
Yes, because I sell it to my students at the price that I get it for.
And it's always more economical to tier your own sizes
Mhm.
than to get a pad.
Those pads are nice though if you're doing a workshop or traveling, like doing plein air or just traveling, because then you don't have to take a board with you, it's already on something.
What's so special about Arches paper?
It's just a good brand. Kilimanjaro is a good brand.
It'll last hundreds of years.
Strathmore is not a good brand.
Yeah.
It isn't?
Not for watercolor.
No.
Really?
Arches and Reeves, I think.
No, if you ever try a good paper, you'll notice a huge difference.
Yeah.
Strathmore and Cotman and trying to think of the brand I get for my grandkids. The pigment just sits right on top of the paper, it doesn't absorb in, so if you touch it again with a brush, it just removes what you just did, even after you've let it dry, which can be really, really frustrating.
Do you find that it has a little mat on it when you brush it? The less expensive papers kind of leave this, what do I wanna say, like a cotton nubby?
Nap?
Yeah, nap,
Oh.
that's the word I'm trying to think of.
No, I have, oh, well, okay, yes. If you get them too wet, it starts bringing up the paper
Yeah.
fibers. And watercolor paper is cotton. I like cold press rough, because I really like texture. I've noticed though, when I do portraits, I prefer the hot press, which is real smooth. Because I did, like my grandkids, I tried one on the cold press rough, and their soft little baby skin has all of these you know, the pigment will settle in and it doesn't look like a young person's skin. So that's when I decided I'd try hot press, which is smooth and it works much better for doing portraits of children. Sometimes I just get really excited doing watercolor. It's just, I have a good time with it. It's just important, right?
That's what it's about.
Yeah. Come on, I get a reflection out in the water. Made sure I brought this board so if I was blowing and go on that, not on you guys if you were standing around. I took a workshop where we were doing alcohol inks, and you use this canned air, and I didn't know how to master that canned air, so I was like blowing my paper towels off the table. I mean, the whole roll. And the people that were sitting there painting, they were like, "Don't you paint on us?" Which I didn't, but I could have. Just don't know. See, I'm not a real fast painter, you probably can notice that. Give indications. Okay. I think maybe I'll just do one side so you guys can kind of see what my plan is here. Down here, I will do the credit card. So, take old credit cards, let's see, my husband's union card, old, anyways, something that's expired, and then cut different edges on it. And then you can take your paint, size edge, I think I'll use this, and I put it directly on there. Lids off first would probably be a good idea. And I think I want purple. And I'm going to go directly to my paper. This is really a great way to use a tremendous amount of watercolor paint. Now I've got it all kind of smeary here. I'm going to just tap the card into the water. This you want to do on dry paper. I've done it on wet, and this card will score your paper or bruise it, it's called. So now, get a brush wet. You can use any size brush. And then you come across and you just kind of touch it. Isn't that fun? a little more water in there, let it go up here. And then this is just kind of a cool way to make grasses or foliage or bushes or something without having to paint them.
You could do a water's edge too.
That's what this is. This is water. Can't really tell that right now, but it is. And you can also take a small brush. Make sure it's clean. Pull some of that up. The thing with this is that I'll have big kind of chunks of paint. Sometimes I'll go back in and I'll take some of it out. But if you don't, or some of them I don't, people just kind of, they're like, how'd you do that?
What do you think about watercolor? I do watercolor India ink, and I draw first, and then I do India ink,
Uh-huh.
and then I draw in the watercolor. So my pattern, my technique would be totally different than that, because if I did do that, the watercolor would run into the India ink, because I do the India ink before I do my watercolor.
Uh-huh.
Like you see these books, for adults, it's an India ink, and you draw it. I do the India ink, the whole drawing before I do the.
So you must just be putting in a little bit of watercolor
Yeah.
to enhance
Well,
it?
no, a lot of watercolor, yeah.
So what's your
So-
question?
Well, I don't know if I should wet the paper first. I don't think so.
Oh.
And
Well, it sounds like you shouldn't because it'll run together. Have you ever tried Sumi ink?
what's it called?
Sumi, S-U-M-I. It's
No.
permanent,
Oh.
so it wouldn't run if you did that. So it would give you more freedom. You'd have to make sure it gets dry first and then do your
Yeah,
water.
but I don't do it all at one time, so I let it dry.
Mm-hmm. What I was saying though, before when you get kind of the chunky paint on here, is that even with putting a mat on your paper, when you go to frame it, if this isn't far enough away from the glass, these humps of paint will stick to the glass. So what I do is I seal this with, I could just use Rust-Oleum's UV clear spray. And it's archival, so your paints won't fade, and then that just seals it so that this stuff, if it, because it is on cotton, it won't, and it will absorb moisture, but if you seal it, then it won't absorb moisture, and this won't have a tendency to run. Like if you hung this in a bathroom and it hadn't been sealed, and it got really steamy, there is a possibility that it could reactivate this somewhat and you could get a little bit of a run, and you don't want that going onto your mat. Little things I've learned the hard way.
Is that something you think you could do with gouache as well? That Rust-Oleum sealant?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and acrylic and.
Okay.
Mhm. It's just Rust-Oleum is a lot less expensive than Krylon. And you can get it at Home Depot. So. So maybe I don't want this quite so dark back here.
Wonder if you could hold it up so we can see the project.
So I'm not sure that I want this as dark. Probably fine, but I'll get a damp brush. And maybe lift a little bit of out of there.
Is that a wet brush?
It is.
Okay.
What do you put your drawing on? What kind of pencil?
I use a mechanical pencil. This one's a 0.7. Get paint on me. So
True painter.
That happens. I debated on wearing an apron today, but I thought, nah. I have more problems with the masking fluid than I do with paint. So let's see here. I'm gonna hit this with a dryer. I want to real quickly do like some credit card stuff down here, then I want to get some of the bigger foreground trees in there for you. Done that so far. It's easier to do this with it flat. Wet. Oh, I like that. Now this doesn't match at all, because I didn't put any of the yellow in there. So I need to change that. Introduce a little. If I put it in the blue part, what color will it go? Green. But I put it in with the purple, it makes a pretty, you would think, but it kind of makes a pretty neutral. Yeah. So remember we did that color test beforehand. Whoops, that's the wrong color. I burnt mine. I might get mine now. A little mud. And I'm gonna soften this edge just with a damp brush so it doesn't dry hard. Solid line. I should have worn been sleeveless today, I think. Okay, life of a painter. We wear it well. Okay, now I might need a little more purple right up here, just because it needs tied together. lots of juicy color in here. Maybe create some lighter values with a damp brush. Let's see. I'm obviously not looking up if anyone has questions, so you'll just have to speak out. Alright, hit that with the dryer. Normally you would want watercolor, you want it to dry enough on its own to where there's not a real sheen left on the paper. And the best way to dry watercolor paper is just let it do its thing. I find that if you use a blow dryer, it tends to dull your colors. But I just read something last night that said if you put your dryer on cool, it won't do that. This is a dry. What happens with watercolor paper, if you go back in, which I will do today, when your paper's not completely dry, and then you reintroduce an influx of water that's not balanced with the moisture content of your paper, it creates a bloom or a charge, it's called, where it's gonna push away from it the paint that you already have in there. Now, if you're doing it in a sky or something, sometimes it's really pretty. It's a cool way to create clouds. Sometimes it's not where you wanted it, but for the sake of time, I'm gonna do it, and we'll just live with the consequences. So. Alright. Show my brushes are clean. All right, I'm gonna start kind of middle ground. I'm gonna have a tree coming up in here. My husband's someone who likes realistic colors, so my stuff doesn't necessarily float his boat. For years, I didn't paint because of him, because I didn't want to. You know, painting's very personal, and I didn't want to be criticized because it doesn't look real. But I'm past that. He's one of these people that can make you feel a little ill at times. Because, he's a great guy, but like the first time he does water skiing, he's up the first time. The first time, so he was helping me with my paint and sips, which were in acrylic. So he decides, I bet I could do that. So he starts with the 5-foot by 4-foot canvas. And he paints this beautiful Mount Hood with aspens in front of it, which we don't have it in my, you know, and I was like, wow, it's quite impressive. And it's like, you know, just, I don't want him to try watercolor. More water, I need it to run, run baby run. A bigger straw is so much easier. I didn't know what I did with it. I think I must have used one of these straws for my drinking cups before. Because this is difficult. I always need an odd number and not all the same size. Let's see.
Are you using a round brush?
I am. And that's total preference. I use both rounds and flats. Some people only use rounds, some people only use flats. When I was taught, we only used flats. And then she took some lessons and challenged herself, and then we were all switched to rounds. And, you know, it's always a challenge to learn something new. That's what keeps life interesting. So I know my time is up. So that's this part. Then I would do bigger trees forward over top of these.
Gives a good atmosphere.
Yeah. And I would have that on both sides. For now, for today, that is all.
Thank you.